Hello everyone, Prime here, and I hope you had a great day. Today we're going to be covering some voodoo gods and goddesses that really should be in Smite, either because they could provide heroes with a lot of creative freedom in terms of what they could do with their kits and abilities, things of that nature, or just because they're pretty cool gods or goddesses. And we're going to be starting this off with a sea god, Dombalea. He was a snake who doesn't communicate using conventional languages. He might not even possess the ability to speak as normal humans do, but he does whistle, and that's a way of communication for him. He can summon rain and is heralded for his ability to nurture crops and sort of be a god of the rain. But a way heroes could take his kit is that he's considered to be a benevolent and innocent being. He's also known to bestow riches upon people and make it easy or just simply grant the ability for people to just find or discover treasure. So he's a fairly generous god in that aspect as well. He also maintains the world as well and prevents it from disappearing. With all of that in mind, he could be a fairly interesting guardian or a support mage. I use that lightly because most likely if he was going to be any sort of support, probably a guardian. And because he's a snake man or a snake, he could have a pretty funky design as like a snaky guardian. I don't think we have like a snake-like guardian. We've got gods that come close to it like Fafnir, but not an actual snake guardian, so that could be interesting. Next up we have the voodoo god of music. Specifically, he works with drums a bit like Raijin, and his name is apparently Joyboy. Now, he's one of the two gods here that I was pretty much only able to find two things about them. One of those being their name, the other one being what they reside over. And I put him here purely because this gives high-res a lot of freedom, a lot like they had with the Mayan Pantheon, to just be creative and give him any sort of kit. They could essentially make him any class they would really like. You could manipulate his usage of drums or pretty much any instrument they like, really, within reason. Or, well, it's their game, they can pretty much do whatever, right? But they could use the fact that he's the god of music to make him an ADC, a bit like Apollo, but I've kind of already done that with Apollo, but you get the point. An assassin, guardian, mage, warrior. So there's a lot of versatility there, and that extends to his design as well. So next up we have Agwe, and he's the actual god of the sea, unlike Dombalea, who's the god of rain, and also lightning, and other things. Agwe is the actual god of the sea, and he was responsible for teaching men how to fish and also how to build boats. And thanks to this, he usually receives tributes of boats full of holes with gifts inside them so that they can sink down into the sea so that Agwe can receive them. I think the best kits he could probably have are either as a warrior or a mage. One centering around more of the fact that he's the god of the sea and the more natural aspect of that, where he's using water and using water-based attacks to burst damage enemies, similar to maybe Hebo. Or he could be a warrior where he's centered around the usage of boats on land. I know that sounds a bit weird, but considering the fact that you can summon horses out of anywhere, you can summon a kraken out of anywhere, you can summon pretty much anything you want out of pretty much anywhere. Well, not what you want, but random things can be put in random places, and the game doesn't 100% make sense, but they're gods, so you can explain that away using that. You can have this man crafting boats and using those as sort of deployables, or even have his ultimate be a massive ship that he can trap enemies in and then drown them with it through the actual ground, and then they're stunned there, a bit like a pitfall trap, but as a boat, like a sinking ship. You could make him a hunter, going after that part of his lore. But moving on, we now have Ogun. He was a former god of blacksmithing before blacksmithing became a little obsolete, and he eventually adopted the title of warrior god. Now, a lot of the lower spirits usually possess people. That's quite a known thing within voodoo mythology, but specifically when Ogun would possess people, those people would be able to not necessarily feel pain, or pain would be meaningless to them, and they could continue fighting without having to stop to notice that one of their arms may have been lobbed off or they got a spear protruding through their chests. Because of the fact that he loves the roar of battle, battle is his best friend, he's acknowledged as a master of lightning. And also it was said that throughout a lot of Haiti's history, he was responsible for a lot of victories for the winning sides of any sort of conflicts. Or not necessarily the victors, but he was part of a fighting spirit during those times. I mention this because we already have a god Nox who can kind of enter bodies, but not really possess those bodies, just sort of hide in them and like not take damage and kind of get a free, what is it, like 6 seconds? I don't play Nox, I don't know how long it lasts, but yeah, she can hide in a body. Maybe expanding upon that mechanic, you could jump inside of the body of an ally or an enemy and take control of them for a bit. That could be pretty interesting. Imagine the dynamic of taking control of an enemy Poseidon and then crackening the enemy's ADC. Of course, then hopping out. And then everyone's like, what the F? But, you know, everyone knows what's going on. New god craziness. Gods one day will probably be that strong. But yeah, that could be a fairly interesting dynamic, I think. Next up, we have one of the strongest goddesses in Voodoo mythology, and she was supposedly the wife of Legba. Legba being an incredibly significant Voodoo deity. One thing I forgot to mention in the Baron Semide video, though, is that there are different places, and I have mentioned this in a previous video, but it's relevant to Semide because different places of the world that practice voodoo might not necessarily all have the same gods, and Baron Semide is specific to Haitian voodoo, but you might not see that in places that practice voodoo across Africa, for instance. Instead, you might see Legba. Legba's wife, or one of his consorts, I'm not sure how many he had. I only say one of his consorts because mythology at this point has shown me that most gods who were fairly significant probably had more than one person who they were quote-unquote with. But Eisen was the goddess of markets. She was a protector deity who protected, of course, markets, public places, certain spiritual places such as temples, things like that. And she also knew her way around the spirit world, i.e. she could travel around it and not get lost. She's credited with being one of the oldest spirits in existence and has many children. But she's also a punisher of mistakes, and she does this to help personally improve a person, like the rich taking advantage of the poor, or the old taking advantage of the young, strong, the weak, so on and so forth, things like that. So of course she could make a pretty nice guardian, I think. Perhaps even an assassin, depending on how they'd want to murder kids though. An older lady doing things that an assassin might do might seem weird. But again, these are gods we're talking about, and spirits in the case of voodoo. So there you go. Last thing I'll mention here is that she can also exorcise spirits from her followers, and these are typically mad or quote-unquote evil spirits. So there's that as well. Now the last god I'll mention is the god that I was talking about before, and I mentioned Joy Boy, and that's Agoro, or Agoro. Didn't find the pronunciation of this god, and again, just like with Joy Boy, didn't find that much about him, other than that he's the god, other than he's a mysterious god. Now, whether or not this is his actual title or role within Voodoo mythology, I don't actually know, but that was the title that I found him with, and I feel like, more so than any other god on this list, Hi-Rez could have the most freedom with this god. You know that Smite really is Hi-Rez's own fictional universe in and of itself. So them taking a god like Agoro, who's essentially pretty much a blank slate, they could do a lot with him. They could give him a set role, first and foremost, or they could play off of the fact that he's a mysterious god. Maybe he is indeed the god of mystery, so maybe they could play off that with his kit, and definitely he'd work as an assassin. I think out of all the gods I've chosen, I've given each one a possibility to fill each of the roles in Smite. So, but yeah, those are the gods or spirits I decided to talk about. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like, and of course if you're new to the channel, want to see more like this, well, you need to hit the subscribe button. But if you haven't seen it already, go ahead and check out my video on Baron Semide, and until the next video, have a very good day or night wherever you are. I have been Prime, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.